Commander Sarah Chen walked through the massive halls of Nexus 7, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. The space station was huge, bigger than most cities back on Earth. It floated in space between stars, a place where different alien species could meet and talk without fighting. Sarah had been working here for 3 years now. She was good at her job, helping different aliens solve their problems without shooting at each other. Most of the time it worked. Today felt different, though. The main meeting room was full of noise. 47 different species had representatives here, and they were all talking at once. Some spoke with voices, others used colors that flashed on their skin, and a few made clicking sounds. Sarah's translator device worked hard to turn it all into English in her ear. At the center of the room stood Ambassador Zethkar. He was 8 feet tall with dark green scales and yellow eyes. His people, the Kreks, were warriors. They solved problems by hitting them until they stopped being problems. Zethkar's tail swept back and forth as he spoke, a sign he was getting angry. The Volani took our trade routes, he said, his voice deep and rough. We warned them. They did not listen. Now they pay the price. Across from him floated Merchant Prime Voss in a water-filled suit. The Volani looked like jellyfish and lived in oceans. Voss's tentacles moved fast, showing he was upset. Your people attacked our ships without warning, Voss said through his suit's speaker. 12 cargo vessels destroyed. Hundreds of my people dead. This is not about trade routes. This is about your people wanting to start a war. Sarah listened to them argue. She had heard the same fight for 3 days now. The Kreks said the Volani were stealing. The Volani said the Kreks were being bullies. Both sides were getting more angry each day. Council mediator Thais sat at the head of the table. She was very old, even for her insect-like people. Her 4 eyes looked tired as she watched the argument. Thais had been solving fights between aliens for over 300 years. She had seen everything. Perhaps, Thais said in her clicking voice, we should hear from the human representative. All eyes turned to Sarah. She was the only human in the room, and much smaller than most of the aliens around her. Some species thought humans were weak because they looked soft compared to others. Sarah did not mind. It often made her job easier when people did not see her as a threat. Sarah stood up slowly. Thank you, Mediator Thais, she said. Her voice was calm and quiet. I have been listening to both sides for 3 days. I think I understand the problem. Zethkar laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. The little pink human thinks she understands warrior business? Your people have been in space for less than 100 years. My people have been fighting for thousands. Sarah nodded. You are right, Ambassador. Humans are new to galactic politics. That is why I would like to suggest a simple solution. She pulled up a hologram showing the disputed trade routes. The routes were like highways in space that ships used to move between star systems safely. The routes you are fighting over are big enough for both your peoples, Sarah said. The Volani can use the routes on even-numbered days. The Kreks can use them on odd-numbered days. Both sides get what they need and no one has to die. Voss's tentacles stopped moving so fast. This could work, he said slowly, but Zethkar's tail hit the floor hard. Ridiculous. The Kreks do not share with thieves. We take what is ours by right of strength. Sarah kept her voice calm. With respect, Ambassador, strength does not make something yours. Laws make something yours. The Galactic Council's laws say those routes belong to everyone. Laws are for the weak, Zethkar said. His hand moved to the weapon at his side. The Kreks are strong. We take what we want. Several smaller species representatives started moving toward the exits. They had seen Kreks warriors fight before. When Zethkar touched his weapon, smart people left the room. Sarah did not move. She kept her hands on the table and her voice steady. I understand you believe in strength, Ambassador. But surely you can see that working together makes everyone stronger than fighting alone. Zethkar stepped closer to Sarah. Even sitting down, she had to look up to see his face. His breath smelled like sulfur and old meat. Little human, he said. Your people are weak. You talk and talk, but you do nothing. You have no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons. You are prey animals trying to play with predators. Thais made a small sound like worry. Her old eyes looked at Sarah with something that might have been concern. In her long life, Thais had heard stories about humans. Old stories that most species tried to forget. Sarah smiled, but her eyes stayed cold. You may be right, Ambassador. Humans do prefer talking to fighting. We believe problems should be solved with words when possible. See? Zethkar turned to address the whole room. The humans admit they are weak. Why do we listen to prey animals? Some of the watching aliens made sounds of agreement. Others stayed quiet. A few looked nervous, like they remembered something they did not want to think about. Sarah's smile did not change. I said we prefer talking, Ambassador. I did not say we were weak. The room got very quiet. Even the translation devices seemed to whisper instead of speak normally. Zethkar laughed again, but it sounded forced now. What will you do, little human? Will you challenge me to combat? Will your soft pink skin protect you from Krek's claws? Sarah stood up slowly. She was barely 5.5 feet tall, tiny compared to Zethkar, but something in the way she moved made several aliens step back. No, Ambassador, she said quietly. I will continue to try to solve this peacefully, but I want you to understand something. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every representative who would look back. Humans have been part of the Galactic Council for 50 years. In that time, we have helped solve 437 disputes without violence. We have stopped 6 wars before they started. We have saved millions of lives by talking instead of fighting. Her voice stayed calm, but something in her tone made the room feel cold. We do this because we believe in peace, because we think all species can work together, because we choose to use words instead of weapons. Zethkar opened his mouth to say something, but Sarah continued. The word choose is important, Ambassador. It means we have other options. Theis's 4 eyes went wide. She had been alive during the last time humans had stopped choosing peace. It had not gone well for the people who made them stop. But Zethkar did not understand the warning. He laughed louder. Options? What options do soft humans have except to beg stronger species for protection? Sarah's smile finally faded. For just a moment, something dangerous flickered in her eyes. Then it was gone and she was calm again. I really hope we do not have to show you, Ambassador, she said softly. I am trying very hard to be reasonable here. The way she said trying very hard made Thess start quietly activating her emergency communication devices. Around the room, representatives from the older species began checking their own emergency protocols. They remembered what happened when humans stopped trying to be reasonable. Zethkar did not notice the change in the room's mood. He was too busy enjoying what he thought was his victory over the weak human diplomat. He had no idea he was making the biggest mistake of his species' history. Retired General Krix sat in his darkened office, staring at old war records on his computer screen. The Hegemony War had ended 30 years ago, but he still thought about it every day, especially when he heard humans were getting involved in galactic disputes. Krix was old now, his blue skin wrinkled and his 4 arms not as strong as they used to be. But his mind was still sharp enough to remember the biggest military mistake in galactic history. The screen showed videos from the early days of the war. Back then, the Hegemony Alliance was made up of 7 advanced species. They had conquered dozens of worlds and controlled a quarter of the galaxy. When they discovered humans, it seemed like just another easy victory. The first video showed human colonies on the edge of space. Small settlements with basic technology. The humans had only been traveling between stars for 20 years. Their weapons were simple. Their ships were slow. They seemed helpless compared to the mighty Hegemony fleets. They looked so weak, Krix said to himself, watching human farmers run from Hegemony soldiers. So harmless. The second video showed the first peace talks. A human diplomat named Admiral Torres sat across from Hegemony leaders. She was calm and polite even though her people were being attacked. We understand you want our colonies, Torres said in the video. Perhaps we can work out a deal. We could pay taxes to your government, or we could share our food production technology. The Hegemony leaders laughed at her. They called humans primitive weaklings and barely intelligent animals. They said humans should be grateful to serve superior species. Admiral Torres kept trying to negotiate. For months she offered compromises. The humans would give up some colonies if the Hegemony left others alone. They would share technology if the attacks stopped. They would even pay tribute if their people could live in peace. Every offer was rejected. The Hegemony wanted total surrender. They wanted humans to become slaves. Krix remembered being proud of his leader's strength. Humans were so small and weak-looking. Why should mighty warriors compromise with prey animals? The third video showed the turning point. Admiral Torres sat in the same peace talks, but something had changed. Her face was harder. Her eyes were cold. My government has authorized me to make one final offer, she said. Stop attacking our colonies immediately. Return the humans you have captured. pay compensation for the damage you have caused. In return, we will forget this happened and continue peaceful relations." The Hegemony Supreme Commander laughed so hard he nearly fell from his chair.
"Or what, little human?"
"What will you do if we refuse?" Admiral Torres looked directly into the camera. Her voice was very quiet, but every word was clear. "Sir, my people have been very patient. We have tried every diplomatic solution. We have offered every compromise we can think of." She paused, and the room got very quiet. "But you have killed 30,000 of my people and enslaved 50,000 more." The Supreme Commander stopped laughing. "Now I'm really getting annoyed," Torres said. The peace talks ended that day. The hegemony leaders thought they had won. They expected humans to surrender or run away. Instead, something incredible happened. Crick switched to the military reports from the next phase of the war. Reading them still made his hands shake. Human ships appeared in hegemony space. But these were not the slow, simple vessels from before. These ships moved faster than anything the hegemony had ever seen. They appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Their weapons cut through hegemony shields like they were not even there. The first hegemony fleet to engage the humans was destroyed in 17 minutes. Not defeated, destroyed. Every ship simply stopped working and floated dead in space. The crews were unharmed, but their weapons and engines would never work again. How? Crix had asked his scientists back then. How did they build such technology so fast? The answer came from captured human databases. Humans had not built the technology fast. They had always had it. They had been hiding their real capabilities from the beginning. While seeming weak and primitive, humans had been developing weapons that could manipulate matter at the atomic level, ships that could bend space and time, defensive systems that could shut down any known technology instantly. They had been pretending to be helpless while building an arsenal that made every other species look like children with toys. The war lasted 6 more months. The hegemony, despite having 7 advanced species and millions of ships, could not win a single battle. Human forces moved through space like they owned it, dismantling military bases and freeing captured humans with surgical precision. But here was the strangest part. Humans did not try to conquer the hegemony. They did not destroy cities or kill civilians. They simply took back what was theirs and left. When the war ended, human forces disappeared back to their own space. Admiral Torres sent one final message to the hegemony leaders. "We hope you have learned that cooperation works better than conquest. We are still willing to be friends, if you are willing to be civilized." Crick switched off the old videos and looked at the current news feeds. A human diplomat named Sarah Chen was trying to solve a dispute between the Kreks and Villani. The report said she was being very patient and reasonable, too patient according to some sources. The Kreks ambassador was publicly insulting her and calling humans weak. Crix felt a chill run down his spine. He had seen this pattern before. Humans always followed the same steps. First, they tried to solve problems peacefully. Then they offered compromises. Then they issued polite warnings. And then, if pushed too far, they said those terrible words, "Now I'm really getting annoyed." After that, things got very bad very quickly for whoever had been pushing them. Crix activated his emergency communications and sent messages to every military contact he still had. The message was simple. If you have any ships near Nexus 7, get them out of there immediately. The humans are about to stop being diplomatic. He had learned 30 years ago that when humans got annoyed, the smart thing to do was run away and let them work alone. Fighting them was not just useless, it was impossible. The hegemony war had taught the galaxy an important lesson. Humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They were not helpless prey animals. They were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, pretending to be harmless because they thought it was more polite. And politeness only lasted until they got really annoyed. Crix looked at his computer screen one more time. Sarah Chen's face looked back at him from a diplomatic photo. She had the same calm expression Admiral Torres had worn in those old peace talks, the same expression she had worn right before the Hegemony Alliance learned what human annoyance really meant. Crick started packing his emergency travel bag. If humans were about to stop being polite, he wanted to be very, very far away when it happened. History had taught him that much wisdom, at least. The emergency alarms on Nexus 7 woke Sarah from her sleep. She checked the time. 3 in the morning, station time. The alarms meant ships were fighting somewhere nearby. Sarah quickly dressed and ran to the command center. The large screens showed what was happening in space around the station. Her heart sank as she watched. Krex warships were attacking Villani merchant vessels. The Villani ships were not military. They were cargo carriers full of families and trade goods. They had no weapons to fight back with. How many ships? Sarah asked the duty officer. 17 Villani vessels under attack, the officer replied. They were trying to leave the system peacefully. The Krex followed them and opened fire. Sarah watched the screens in horror. The Krex ships were much bigger and stronger. Villani cargo ships exploded one by one, their hulls breaking apart in bright flashes. Each explosion meant hundreds of people dying. Are we getting rescue signals? Sarah asked. Some, the officer said sadly. But the Krex are shooting at rescue pods too. Sarah felt something cold and hard settle in her stomach. Shooting at rescue pods was against every rule of space warfare. It was the kind of thing that made wars turn ugly very fast. Get me a direct line to Ambassador Zethkar, she said. The communication screen lit up with Zethkar's face. Behind him, Sarah could see the bridge of his flagship. Krex warriors were cheering as another Villani ship exploded. Ambassador, Sarah said, keeping her voice level. You need to stop this attack immediately. Zethkar laughed. Why? These thieves thought they could run away instead of facing Krex justice. Now they learn the price of crossing warriors. Those are civilian ships, Sarah said. Families, children, they have nothing to do with your trade dispute. They are Villani, Zethkar replied. That is enough. Weaklings who hide behind human diplomats deserve what they get. The communication ended. On the screens, more Villani ships died. Within 2 hours, it was over. 17 ships destroyed. 12,000 Villani dead. A few hundred survivors floated in space pods waiting for rescue. Sarah worked through the morning organizing rescue operations. Human medical ships rushed to help the survivors. Other species sent aid too, but many were afraid to get too close. They did not want the Krex to attack them as well. By noon, the emergency session of the Galactic Council was ready to begin. Representatives from every species gathered in the main hall. The mood was dark and angry. Sarah had prepared a speech about emergency ceasefires and humanitarian aid. She hoped to get the fighting stopped before more people died, but when she stood up to speak, Zethkar interrupted her. The mighty human diplomat wants to lecture us again, he announced loudly. Tell us, Sarah Chen, what will your weak people do about this? Will you file a complaint? Will you write a strongly worded letter? Some of the Krex representatives laughed. Sarah ignored them and continued with her speech. The Galactic Council calls for an immediate ceasefire, she said. All military vessels must return to their home territories. Humanitarian aid ships must be allowed to help survivors without interference. Refused, Zethkar said before she finished talking. The Krex recognize no authority higher than strength. Your council has no power over warriors. Sarah tried a different approach. Then let us send medical supplies to help the wounded. Surely you can allow that much? Medical supplies? Zethkar's eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. You mean these medical supplies? The main screen showed space outside the station. 3 human hospital ships were approaching, their hulls painted with large red crosses to show they were not military. Krex fighters suddenly appeared and opened fire. The hospital ships exploded in seconds, taking their medical crews and supplies with them. The council chamber fell completely silent. Everyone stared at the screen in shock. Even attacking rescue pods was bad, but destroying marked hospital ships was something else entirely. It was a war crime that could not be ignored or forgiven. Sarah sat down slowly. Her face had gone very pale, but her voice stayed calm. Ambassador Zethkar, she said quietly, you have just destroyed clearly marked medical vessels on a humanitarian mission. I have destroyed human ships that tried to interfere with Krex business, Zethkar replied. He seemed proud of what he had done. Let this be a lesson to all weak species who think they can challenge warriors. Around the chamber, representatives started moving toward the exits. Not just the small species this time. Even the big, powerful ones were leaving. They had seen this situation before, many years ago. They knew what came next, mediator. Thais stood up on her shaky old legs. I call for immediate recess, she announced. All representatives should return to their ships and prepare for emergency departure. Departure? Zethkar looked confused. Why would anyone leave? The entertainment is just beginning. But Sarah had stood up again. Something about her posture made the whole room stop moving. She looked directly at Zethkar, and her eyes were no longer the warm brown they had been that morning. They were cold and hard like winter ice. "Ambassador Zethkar," she said, her voice very quiet but somehow filling the entire chamber. "For 3 days I have tried to solve this dispute peacefully. I have offered compromises. I have followed every diplomatic protocol in the Galactic Charter." Zethkar started to say something, but Sarah continued talking. Her voice never got louder, but it cut through any other sound like a laser through metal. "You have rejected every reasonable solution. You have killed civilians in front of the Galactic Council. You have destroyed rescue pods and medical ships." She paused, and the room held its breath. "You have threatened my people while they were trying to save lives." Dice was frantically typing on her emergency communicator, sending evacuation orders to every ship in the system. Around the chamber, the few remaining representatives were quietly heading for the doors. Sarah's voice dropped even lower, but every word was perfectly clear. "I have been patient with you, Ambassador. I have been reasonable. I have been diplomatic." Her expression never changed, but something terrible flickered behind her eyes. "But you have just killed civilians under a flag of truce and threatened my people's humanitarian mission." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Now I'm really getting annoyed. The effect was immediate. Every species except humans and Kreks began emergency evacuation procedures. Ships that had been in the system for weeks suddenly developed urgent business elsewhere. Even the Villani survivors abandoned their rescue pods and fled in whatever ships could carry them. Within 6 hours, Nexus 7 was nearly empty. Only human ships and the Kreks battle fleet remained in the area. Zethkar watched the evacuation with growing confusion. "Why is everyone running?" he asked his officers. "What are they afraid of?" His military advisor, an older Kreks who had actually read historical reports, looked nervous. "Sir, perhaps we should consider withdrawing as well." The human said she was getting annoyed. "So?" Zethkar snapped. "What can one weak human do against the might of the Kreks Empire?" The advisor looked at the tactical display showing their battle fleet. Hundreds of ships armed with the most advanced weapons in Krek space. It should have been more than enough to handle anything humans could throw at them, but he remembered reading old files about something called the HFY War, files that described what happened when humans got annoyed the last time. "Sir," he said quietly, "I really think we should leave." Zethkar struck him across the face with the back of his hand. "Coward, we are Kreks warriors. We do not run from pink-skinned weaklings." On Nexus 7, Sarah walked calmly back to her quarters. She had phone calls to make. Important calls to very important people back on Earth. People who had been waiting patiently for 30 years for someone to push humans too far again. People who were about to remind the galaxy why most species preferred humans to stay diplomatic. The calls would take about an hour to complete. After that, Zethkar would learn the real meaning of human annoyance, and the lesson would be unforgettable. 3 days passed quietly in the space around Nexus 7. The Kreks battle fleet waited in formation, expecting human reinforcements to arrive. Zethkar was confident his warriors would make quick work of whatever ships Earth sent. "Humans are cowards," he told his fleet commanders during their daily briefing. "They will probably send diplomats to beg for mercy." His tactical officer checked the long-range sensors again. "Sir, I am detecting incoming ships. They should arrive within the hour." Zethkar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "How many?" 12 vessels, sir." "Much smaller than our ships." 12? Zethkar laughed. "The mighty human fleet is 12 tiny ships. This will be easier than I thought." But when the human ships finally appeared, they looked nothing like any vessels in the galactic databases. They were sleek and dark, shaped like teardrops made of black metal, no visible weapons, no obvious engines. They moved through space silently like shadows. "What class of ships are those?" Zethkar demanded. His science officer frantically checked the computer records. "Unknown, sir. I cannot find any matching designs in our files." "Then they must be new," Zethkar said. "Probably some kind of desperation weapon. Prepare to attack." The lead human ship opened a communication channel. Sarah's face appeared on the screen. She looked exactly the same as always, calm, polite, professional. "Ambassador Zethkar," she said, "this is your final opportunity to surrender peacefully. Order your fleet to stand down and prepare to be taken into custody for war crimes." Zethkar nearly fell out of his chair laughing. 12 small ships against my entire battle fleet? Human, you must be insane. I was afraid you would say that, Sarah replied. She did not sound surprised or angry. Just tired. Very well. You have chosen this outcome. The communication ended. Sethkar turned to his weapons officer. Target the human ships. Destroy them all. Yes, sir. Firing main batteries now. The Krek's flagship's massive energy cannons fired. Beams of pure destruction lanced out toward the human vessels. Each beam carried enough power to vaporize a small moon, but the beams never reached their targets. Instead, they simply stopped in empty space, hanging in the air like frozen lightning. After a moment, they faded away completely. What happened? Sethkar demanded. Unknown, sir, the weapons officer said, his voice shaking. The weapons fired correctly, but the energy just disappeared. Fire again. The same thing happened. And again. And again. No matter what weapons the Kreks used, the beams vanished before reaching the human ships. On the human flagship, Sarah spoke into her communicator. All ships, you are cleared to engage. Show them what human engineering can really do. What happened next was impossible. The human ships simply vanished. One moment they were there, the next they were gone. Then they reappeared inside the Kreks formation, moving between the massive warships like ghosts. How are they doing that? Sethkar screamed. His science officer was staring at his instruments in disbelief. Sir, according to our sensors, they are bending space-time around their hulls. They are not traveling through space, they are folding space to move instantly from one place to another. Sethkar did not understand the science, but he understood the problem. Enemy ships that could appear anywhere instantly were impossible to fight. All ships, attack the humans at close range, he ordered. They cannot dodge if we are right next to them. The Krek ships tried to follow his order, but their weapons still would not work. Every shot, every missile, every energy beam simply stopped working the moment it left their ships. Then the human ships began their counterattack, but they did not use weapons. Instead, something even more frightening happened. The Krek ship's weapons system simply shut down. Not destroyed, shut down. As if someone had flipped a switch and turned them off. One by one, every gun, every missile launcher, every defense system stopped working. Engineering report. Sethkar demanded. Sir, there's nothing wrong with our weapons. They are receiving power, all systems show green. But they will not fire. It is as if they have forgotten how to work. Next, the engines died. All of them on every ship in the fleet. Hundreds of massive warships suddenly floated helpless in space, unable to move or fight. The human ships moved among them like shepherds among sheep. Wherever they went, Krek's vessels simply stopped functioning. Not exploded, not damaged, just stopped. Sarah's voice came over the communication system again, broadcasting to every ship in the Krek's fleet. Attention, Krek's forces. Your weapons and engines have been permanently disabled. Your ships are now under human control. Any attempt to resist will result in your life support systems being shut down as well. Sethkar grabbed his personal communicator. This is impossible. What kind of weapons are you using? We are not using weapons, Ambassador, Sarah replied. We are using something much more advanced. Humans learned long ago how to manipulate matter at the quantum level. Your weapons, your engines, your computers, they are all made of atoms. We can simply tell those atoms to stop working together. The science officer looked up from his console with wide, terrified eyes. Sir, she is talking about nanotechnology beyond anything we thought possible. They can control individual atoms over vast distances. But how? Sethkar demanded. How did humans develop such technology? Your people are barely out of their home system. Sarah's image appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Sethkar could see the bridge of her ship. It looked nothing like the crude human technology he had seen in intelligence reports. Everything was smooth and advanced, like it had been built by a civilization millions of years old. Ambassador, you made the same mistake everyone makes about humans, Sarah said. You assumed that what we show you is all we have. You thought our simple trade ships and basic colonies were examples of our best technology. She gestured to something off-screen, and the view changed to show the human fleet. But now there were not 12 ships, there were dozens. More were appearing every minute, materializing out of empty space. The truth is, humans have been hiding our real capabilities since we first met other species. We learned very quickly that showing our full technology makes other species either run away in fear or try to steal it from us. More human ships kept appearing, not just warships but massive vessels the size of cities, ships that looked like they could build or destroy entire worlds. So we chose to appear harmless, Sarah continued. We used old technology when dealing with other species. We pretended to be weak and simple. We thought it would make cooperation easier. Zethakar was beginning to understand how badly he had miscalculated. You have been lying to everyone? Not lying, Sarah corrected. Just not showing off. Humans really do prefer peace and cooperation. But we also believe in justice, and we will not tolerate bullies who kill innocent people. She looked directly at him through the screen. You wanted to see what humans are really capable of, Ambassador. This is what happens when we stop pretending to be harmless. Around the disabled Krex fleet, more human ships appeared. Some were the size of moons. Others looked like they were made of pure energy instead of matter. All of them moved with impossible grace and speed. Your fleet is completely disabled, Sarah announced. Your ships will be towed to a neutral location where you will face trial for war crimes. Your crews will be treated well, because unlike you, humans do not believe in harming prisoners. Zethkar slumped in his command chair. His mighty fleet, the pride of the Krex Empire, had been defeated without a single shot being fired. Worse, they had been defeated so easily that it was obvious the humans had not even tried very hard. Why? He asked quietly. If you have this kind of power, why do you bother with diplomacy at all? You could conquer the entire galaxy. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Because conquering people does not make them your friends, Ambassador. We learned that lesson a long time ago. True strength is not about how much you can destroy. It is about how much you can build and protect. She paused, looking sad. We tried to solve this peacefully. We offered you every chance to choose cooperation over conquest, but you chose violence against innocents. That is the one thing humans will never tolerate. The communication ended. Around the Krex fleet, human ships began the process of towing the disabled vessels to safety. Zethkar sat in his powerless command chair and tried to understand what had just happened. He had attacked what he thought was a weak species, and instead had discovered the most powerful force in the galaxy, a force that chose to hide its strength because it preferred building to destroying, a force that he had just made very, very annoyed. For the first time in his life, the mighty Krex warrior was truly afraid. 1 month later, Nexus 7 was busier than ever. The great space station had been rebuilt and expanded, now serving as the new center of galactic diplomacy. But things were very different from before. Sarah walked through the main corridor, noticing how other species representatives moved aside to let her pass. Not from fear exactly, but from respect. Deep, careful respect that came from knowing what humans were really capable of. The trial of Ambassador Zethkar had ended the day before. He was found guilty of war crimes and sentenced to 50 years of community service, helping rebuild the Villani settlements his people had destroyed. It was a human idea. That punishment should teach lessons, not just cause pain. The new Krex ambassador, a younger female named Sektar, had been much more reasonable. She publicly apologized for her predecessor's actions and signed new peace treaties with both humans and Villani. The Krex Empire was slowly learning that cooperation worked better than conquest. Sarah entered the main council chamber for the monthly assembly. Representatives from all 47 species were present, but the room felt different now, calmer, more focused. When she spoke, everyone listened carefully. Today we have 3 disputes to resolve, Sarah announced. Trade disagreements between the Altani and the hegemony successors, mining rights in the Vega system, and territorial questions near the Galactic Rim. In the old days, these would have taken weeks to solve. Species would argue, threaten each other, and sometimes start shooting. Now, with human mediation backing up the negotiations, solutions came much faster. When the Altani representative tried to claim exclusive rights to a trade route, Sarah simply looked at him calmly. "Are you sure that is your final position?" she asked quietly. The Altani quickly changed his mind and agreed to share the route. When 2 minor species started arguing about mining rights, Sarah said, "Perhaps you would prefer to let humans mediate this dispute directly?" Both sides immediately agreed to compromise. Nobody wanted to find out what happened when humans got involved directly. The Krex fleet was still being held at the human-controlled station, their crews learning about peaceful cooperation, while their ships were slowly being converted into hospital and research vessels. After the session, Mediator Theiss approached Sarah. The old insectoid looked tired but relieved. "Your people have brought great stability to the galaxy. Thais said in her clicking voice. I have been mediating disputes for 300 years and I have never seen such cooperation. Sarah smiled. We did not do anything special. We just made it clear that bullying would not be tolerated anymore. But how? Thais asked. How did humans become so powerful while appearing so harmless? Sarah gestured toward the large viewing window that showed space around the station. In the distance, human ships moved among the civilian traffic. They looked like ordinary cargo vessels and passenger transports, nothing special or threatening. The secret is that we never stopped being harmless, Sarah explained. Humans really do prefer peace and cooperation. We would rather build than destroy, create rather than conquer. Theis's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. But our technology exists to protect that choice, Sarah continued. We developed advanced weapons not because we wanted to fight, but because we wanted to make sure nobody could force us to fight. When you are strong enough to win any war instantly, other species prefer to talk rather than fight. It was true. Since the Krex incident, military conflicts had dropped to almost zero. When everyone knew that humans would step in to stop aggressive wars, leaders chose negotiation instead of violence. There is something I do not understand, Thais said. Why hide your capabilities for so long? Why pretend to be weak? Sarah looked out at the peaceful traffic around the station. Ships from dozens of species traveled together safely, trading and cooperating instead of fighting. Because fear does not create lasting peace, she said. If we had revealed our full capabilities immediately, other species would have been too afraid to work with us. They would have submitted out of terror, not chosen cooperation out of wisdom. She turned to face this directly. By appearing harmless first, we gave everyone a chance to get to know us as people, not as a threat. We built friendships and trust. Now when we enforce the peace, species understand that we are doing it to protect everyone, not to dominate anyone. Thais nodded slowly. A fascinating strategy. Earn trust through apparent weakness, then reveal strength only when necessary to protect that trust. Exactly, Sarah agreed. And it works because humans really are trustworthy. We do not want to rule other species. We want to explore the galaxy together, learn from each other, and build something wonderful. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Sarah checked her communicator and smiled. Speaking of building something wonderful, she said, I just received confirmation that the new joint research station will be completed next month. 12 species working together to study quantum physics and develop better medical technology. Remarkable, Thais said. Before the Krex incident, getting 3 species to cooperate on anything was nearly impossible. Sarah's communicator chimed again. This time her expression grew more serious as she read the message. What is it? Thais asked. 3 systems away, the Vorthon Empire is threatening to invade Zephyrian colonies. They claim the Zephyrians are weak and deserve to be conquered. Theis's antennae drooped. The Vorthons are a proud warrior species, much like the Krex used to be. They will not listen to diplomatic warnings. Sarah stood up and began walking toward the communication center. Then I suppose I will have to go talk to them personally. Will you take a fleet? Thais asked, hurrying to keep up. Oh no, Sarah said with a slight smile. I will go alone in a simple diplomatic vessel. I find that humans are much more persuasive when we do not appear threatening. Thais stopped walking. Alone against an entire empire? Sarah paused and looked back. Mediator Thais, what do you think will happen when I arrive and the Vorthons refuse to listen to reasonable diplomatic solutions? Thais thought about it for a moment. The Vorthons would probably insult Sarah, call humans weak, and threaten to attack human ships. They would reject every compromise and demand total submission from the Zephyrians. And then Sarah would probably say those words that had become famous throughout the galaxy. Now I'm really getting annoyed. After that, the Vorthon Empire would learn the same lesson the Krex had learned. The hard way, I suspect, Thais said slowly, that the Vorthons will choose to negotiate after all. I certainly hope so, Sarah replied. Violence should always be the last resort. But sometimes people need to be reminded why peaceful solutions are preferable. She continued toward the communication center to arrange her trip. Behind her, Thais activated her own communicator and began sending warnings to every ship in Vorthon space. The message was simple. Human diplomat incoming. Evacuate immediately if you value your continued existence. Throughout the galaxy, the message was passed along. Within hours, Shipping routes around Vorthon space were empty. Smart captains knew better than to be nearby when humans got annoyed. The Vorthon Empire had no idea what was coming. They were about to learn that in the modern galaxy there were rules. Rules enforced by a species that preferred peace but was very, very good at war. Rules enforced by humans who had spent decades proving they could be trusted with ultimate power because they only used it to protect the innocent. Sarah reached the communication center and began arranging her diplomatic mission. She hoped the Vorthons would be reasonable. She really did prefer solving problems with words. But if they chose violence over wisdom, she was prepared to remind them why every species in the galaxy had learned to flee when a human said, "Now I'm really getting annoyed." The galaxy was finally at peace, and humans intended to keep it that way, even if it meant getting annoyed from time to time.